Thank you, Mark. And I'm going to try to do this without the mic. Can you hear me in the back all right? I'll speak up. On the issue of immigration, and I'm going to mention this before I actually start, but there was a Nobel Prize laureate in economics, Milton Friedman, the great Milton Friedman, who said it is not possible to have a welfare state and open borders. You can't do it. It's because everyone's going to flock in for the free things in the welfare state, and you no longer have a country. So immigration is very important. What I'm going to talk about a little bit about the county party, how it is and where it is and how we got here. Do that very quickly, a little bit, my thoughts on the election, and then also where we need to be going after November. What happens, how we're going to retain what we have. I'm going to condense something I usually talk about, the history of the Republican Party in Texas, into just a couple sentences. It started out after the Civil War, and it was a Democrat, but a very conservative state. The reason it was a Democrat state is that the carpetbaggers were Republicans from Washington that came down here. And so there was a natural pushback by the local people. That was true, but Texas was conservative. And that was true all the way up until when Reagan ran in '76. So I'm jumping a couple hundred years, or 100 years later. What happened in '76, the largest turnout that we had ever had in the Republican primary in Tarrant County was about 12 or 13,000. We had over 40,000. A lot of conservative Democrats came over, pro-life people that hadn't been involved came over and became active, and people that just hadn't voted in primaries came out to vote for Reagan. It dropped down a little bit with the Clements election and then back up to 43,000, and Reagan of course won, and for the 8 years that he was there set us on the road. When I became active in '75, we had one elected Republican in Tarrant County, Betty Ann DeHart. She was a state senator in a very unique situation, the way she addressed her constituency and could pull votes. She had a lot of minority votes, a lot of votes out of Como. She herself was Hispanic. By the time I became the county chairman in '88, we had grown to 28% of the county, and as Mark said, by the time I left 10 years later in '98, we had 89% of the county in every county-wide office. Okay, that's kind of the quick history. There are some other things in there, though, that I'd like to point out. There is a factor that we use in politics called net vote. The net vote is if you took the George Bush vote and you subtracted the John Kerry vote, you got a raw number. Not talking about percentages, I'm talking about just raw numbers of votes. We had grown so strong that in 1994, when Bob Dole ran for president against Bill Clinton, we were within 400 votes of having more net vote than Dallas and Harris counties combined. Wow. We were the second most Republican county in terms of raw numbers in the entire United States. First was Orange County, California. Now what's happened since then is Orange County has slipped to 5th. We have dropped to 3rd. You say, well, who were the first and second? Collin County and Montgomery County. So Texas has the top 3 Republican counties in the nation in terms of raw votes. And why you say, well, why are raw votes important? Denton County, Collin County, they've always had a higher percentage because they don't have an inner city population. But they didn't have the numbers until recently, as they've grown and as the conservatives left Dallas County and fled into Rockwall and Collin and Kaufman counties. So their percentages, Dallas got worse, but the growth in the Collin County put them up in 1 and 2 with Woodlands. Now why is that important? It's because the net vote can be used to offset the areas we lose in the other. There are 6 metropolitan counties in the state. Just Dallas, Harris County, which is Houston, Travis, which is Austin, Bexar County, San Antonio, and El Paso, and Tarrant. We lose all 5 of those. but the raw vote that we come out of in Tarrant County can be used to offset the losses we have in other parts of the state. That's why Tarrant County is important. And you've heard people say this, and I'll say it again. If we lose Tarrant, we'll lose Texas. If we lose Texas, we lose the presidency, and we may never have another one, particularly if Florida goes. And right now, it looks like the governorship in Florida may go to the Democrat, where that's really dicey. The Republicans down by about 6 points. And the Democrat is the former mayor of Tallahassee that is a very liberal guy. Right now he's almost under indictment for a lot of corruption that's gone on. But anyway, so we've got to hold what we've done in Tarrant County. We have to hold that. We can't sit on our laurels and say, hey, we did a great job, we'll rest. You either grow or you die. Those of you that have seen the movie Patent, if you go back to that original opening speech, he says, I don't want to hear anyone holding their ground. We're going to go forward. We're going to attack, attack, attack. And so if we don't make progress and move forward with what we're doing in the county, and I'll get to that at that last part of the speech where I talked about going after in November. And by the way, I don't have a script. So if I say something that needs more explanation, raise your hand. And you're not going to interrupt me and we could just go on. But I'll talk about what happens after November. Where we have gotten to is a point that we're having to deal with a generation of kids, youngsters that have grown up with a college that's been taught by professors that were radicals in the 60s and they've corrupted. And there's a lot of good organizations. The Leadership Institute's working on that. Heritage has interns, Heritage Foundation, and this new one, the Turning Point USA, very active in colleges, and they're pushing back. But we've got a lot to do. I've been wondering, why are the millennials so decided that they like Bernie Sanders, they like socialism, they like communism? What's going on? So I've been reading some of these books. I don't think they've read the books. They just hear about free tuition and free health care and all this sort of stuff without any idea of how they're going to pay for it. But if you go back to Utopia, Thomas More, written in 1516, and it has, this wonderful, magnificent structure. Everybody gets food. Everybody's got shelter. There's no freedom in there, guys. There is no freedom. And that's what happens with totalitarianism, whether it's Marxist communism or the totalitarian communism that Stalin had. You don't have, well, look what's happening in Venezuela right now. There's no freedom. That's what these people from Honduras, although I think that's not the problem. The problem is George Soros is probably funding everything that's bringing these people up here. So the Tarrant County is important. And it's important because of all of you and what you've done and how we have gotten from where we started to where we are today. And if the people in this room, the fact that you meet. Now, what I'm going to ask you is how many of you saw this kind of gets to the election, but how many of you saw the rally, saw or heard the rally with President Trump and Ted Cruz in Houston? Yeah. I walked away from, and I was in the car traveling and I heard all of it, and I walked away from there saying, that I've never seen our people so fired up. I mean, they were cheering every time Ted opened his mouth or Trump opened his mouth. That whole crowd just was energized. They need to take that energy out into the streets. And I want to ask all of you to do something for the election, and that is, whether you have been volunteers in phone banks or whether you have gone door to door, which is a very good thing if you could do that. But I want you to at least make a commitment to yourself that you will call a minimum of 5, preferably 10 people that you know. And the script that are conservative, and the script that you're going to ask them is, so I'm calling you and I'd say, Sally, I would consider it a personal favor to me if you will commit to going out to the polls and making sure you get your vote cast. It's not just a phone bank caller that doesn't know the callee. It's you are calling someone you know and saying, it is a personal favor to me that you will get out to the polls and cast that vote. They'll do it. The person that gets a caller from the phone bank may or may not. But if you ask them to go, they will go. Because they don't want to let you down. They're a friend. They know you. So that's important. Now, a little bit about what I think is going to happen in the election, particularly after the Trump rally. I feel pretty good about Texas. I know Cruz was at one time they were saying it was neck and neck, and then he was 9 points up. Now I'm hearing 6. I don't know, but I just think that we're going to be able to carry Cruz. If we carry Cruz, and that's important, and we'll probably carry the state. What I'm hearing from Rush, if you listen to Rush, he thinks we're going to hold the Senate and pick up in the House. No, hold the House and pick up in the Senate. And that's very possible in some of the races that are out there. In spite of the fact that Trump likes to rub people the wrong way, he's also saying things and doing things that make the country great. The economy, I don't have to repeat all those, you hear those. But whether it's the economy, the jobs and everything, and it's jobs and bonds. I'm going to show you something, though, that we need to be aware of. I printed this off the internet when it was still available. I don't know if it is now. It's a booklet. I've got all the pages in here. And it says, Indivisible, a practical guide for resisting the Trump agenda.
Oh, yeah.
These people are not dumb. We don't want to sell them short. The mobs are dumb. They're emotional. They go out and do things. But this agenda starts out, there's a notes, introduction, summary, chapter 1, how grassroots advocacy worked to stop Obama. That's the Tea Party. And they said, oh, this is what they did. We need to learn and take from that. Chapter 2, how your member of Congress thinks and how to use that to save democracy. Chapter 3, organize a local group to fight for your congressional district. Chapter 4, local advocacy tactics that actually work. And then what to do if your member is not visible. Kay Granger doesn't hold town hall meetings. Well, the answer is she should. But the point is that who wants to go to a town hall meeting and have people scream when you're trying to communicate, and there's no communication. These people are, Trump said it, well, he said it about MS-13, I'll say it about them. They're animals. They're uncouth, they're uncivilized, and there's one little phrase in here that I'm going to read at the tail end from Obama. And the reason I bring this up is because I want you to know that the other side is not resting on their laurels. Obama, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. That applies to you as well as to the other side. The old story about, well, let George do it. Well, you're George. You know, let them do it. You are them. And it's time to be sure that we all become active and get moving. And I'm going to jump into what happens after November. My last State of the County message, and I would do that for the executive committee, the precinct chairman, at the end of the cycle. The last one I gave, I said, the Republican star in the state of Texas will continue to rise for the next 12 to 15 years. After that, if we haven't made a significant penetration of the Hispanic community, we will go into a decline. Well, 12 to 15 years that would have been up, 15 would have been up in about, what, 2013. We've got a reprieve because we have a Hispanic senator, even though a lot of Hispanics don't like him because he's Cuban, but he's a Hispanic senator, and the First Lady of Texas is Hispanic. Abbott is married to a Hispanic, and so that has helped us to some degree. But we need to start making a serious penetration in the community, and by that I'm not talking about we want you. No, we've got to be there in the, how many of you have maids or gardeners or somebody that comes by? If they're Hispanic, talk to them, engage them. Why do you support Beto? Oh, you mean that Irishman? He's not Hispanic. They don't even know that. They think, oh, he's one of us, Beto or work. No, it's Robert Francis O'Rourke. And so those sort of things that you talk to people. We can't just say we're an open party, we want people to come. No, we have to go out and find them. Find some way to make a contact and influence them. You may not change their mind, but over a period of time you might. And that's going to be necessary because of the demographic changes that are taking place, particularly if the Hondurans if they get up here and just flood the border. But I'm with Trump. I would use the military. I know there's a posse comitatus law, but the posse comitatus law is you can't use the military internally in the country against the people. But we're talking about lining the border and preventing an invasion. You know, it's interesting, when I saw all that going on in Europe, and my lady friend is from Germany, been here for 50 years, but she's a citizen, but was raised in Germany, and I said, Ann, what's taking place over there is an invasion, because I've been reading about a lot of historical stuff that goes back 3,500 BC all the way up to the present time. That is an invasion. It just doesn't have weapons. All those people that were coming into Germany, and Merkel has gotten herself in big trouble because she's opened the border and let almost 1 million people into the country of 83 million people. And now she's in trouble politically, and the other countries are saying we don't want them. Some of them are saying we're going to ship them back. The problem that we have is twofold with some of this immigration, is that it is a cultural difference, particularly if they come illegally, because they don't learn our laws, they don't follow our laws, their culture is different. And to a degree, we have some issues on the Middle East about bringing in people that have a Islamic background versus a Christian background. And so on a mass scale, that can affect things. Anyway, that's kind of what I was going to say and talk about. Are there any questions about what I've said? If I left something out? Mike.
Steve,
Yeah.
I've been hearing reports from various different precincts, specifically one where Steve West voted yesterday. And in the booths, not just one booth, but all of the booths in the polling place, was a Democrat flyer which said, vote straight ticket Democrat. And it was, and it's on Facebook. You can actually see on his Facebook, on Steve West's Facebook, where he went to the poll and he took a picture of it, and they said, oh, that's a mistake, that shouldn't have been there, and then they went through and pulled it out after he pointed it out.
That was at an early voting site?
Yes. And when I voted over at the League of Women Voters building over here right over on Pioneer Parkway, there were a lot of folks that were inside the 100-foot marker. And I volunteered to be an election judge again. This is going to be my third time being an election judge, so it's going to be fun. But we have obvious violations that are going on. Yeah. And the people that were inside, by the way, were Robert Francis folks. Okay, they were inside the 100-foot marker line. And when I got out of my car, I said, I think the 100-foot marker line is back there. And they said, so?
Well, you need to go to the election judge themselves.
We did.
And if that judge won't enforce that, you report them to Election Central.
That's what I did. That's what I did. And then she, the day before that, she was hopping all over my wife as she was voting with her, saying you can't bring your phone in the booth. But the most important part was she was pointing out that there was a woman standing over another woman in a booth, guiding her on the ballot, and her malady or her
disability.
She didn't speak English.
And I went, that's not allowed.
And
so we're going to allow it.
So we have, and in that particular poll, that's a Democrat who is in charge of it. My point is, Darrell brought up, I think, that we needed poll watchers. We need it more than you know, and I think we need it at the early polling places. So
for sure.
I filed a complaint today with the Tarrant County Elections Administrator.
Good.
So I did get that. And another thing, I don't know if anybody in here has applied for a mail-in ballot and did not get one yet, but my daughter, who's at OU, ordered one on October 8th, same day that she sent one in, and Lynn sent it in for her boyfriend and her at the same time on October 8th. He's from Arlington, we're from Hollern City. He got his at OU, already voted and already sent it in. She's not gotten hers. I called over there today, they still haven't gotten it out. They said, we've had so many that they're a little behind in processing. And I said, you know, that sounds a little bit like voter suppression to me. Oh, that's not voter suppression. No, we're just behind. Conveniently behind. What I'm suggesting here is there are some things going on, and we're not and there's not enough of us to pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
We need to get people, honestly, to go down and be poll watchers, because things are going on at these polls right now. And I think Steve's down in South Fort Worth, Steve Weston's. So we have to be vigilant for what's going on,
Yeah,
especially in this volume.
If you see something, say something.
But what do you
And
do?
report it.
What do you do if they steal it? I mean, they just disregard it. What do you do?
Oh, I filed a complaint, so they have to deal with it. One way or another.
Well, what can happen is if the election judge is abusive in terms of party or candidates, we can possibly get to the point that they will never use that person in the future. So,
But it's too late. I mean,
yeah.
votes are cast.
We need to have people outside the 100-foot lines to allow the veto people, and I call them Howard Francis people. I love the way that you do that as well. But for them to be inside the 100-foot marker, while everybody else is on the outside, and they're just flaunting it. They know they're not supposed to be there, but they're there, and they know nobody's going to force them to leave.
they're anarchists and they don't follow the rule of law.
So what do you do?
That's the
So
problem.
what do you do?
Oh, what I would do, well, first of all, I'd notify our headquarters, and I would have them have us, Jeremy or Darrell,
Right.
contact the Elections Central. If you can't get that, if you have a friendly constable in
Yeah.
your area,
Yeah.
I would have the constable come by and enforce the law.
Time for police enforcement.
Well, I told Garcia today I talked to Garcia today and requested that he do something about that over at the League of Women Voters.
Yeah.
Is that your district, Matt?
It's
It's on the corner of Park Springs,
yeah.
Park Springs and Pioneer Park.
No, that's gonna be Woodruff.
Okay, well, we need, Darrell or
Well, I'm going to call John Siegel tonight, who's my constable on the west side,
yeah.
and make sure he or one of his men periodically just drive by the Viola Pitts Center on Bryan Irving, and there's one on Hollern and so forth.
Get David Woodruff out.
And check on that.
Woodruff will
Yes,
do that.
So the place where he was talking about where Stephen West voted was the Southside Community Center on Rosedale.
You
And
have a picture of the?
I do, on my phone. Anyway, it's a Democrat, it's a door hanger, and it has vote straight Democrat, vote for families in our community, vote for change. And I think
well, what
it's-
they probably did was, hopefully, assume the judge is doing their job. What they probably did is some voter went in and voted and slipped it out of his pocket and stuck it in the booth.
Well, anyway,
all
what I was
of them.
gonna say,
Huh?
It was in all the booths.
Oh, it was all the booths?
All the booths. They may have come as a group
Yeah.
and put them there, but you know that, as an election judge, and I've worked that before, when you see that, you can see your booth, you follow everybody. I mean, it is incumbent upon the election judge to do their job and make sure that it is a sterile atmosphere for people to vote. That was not, and I don't know how many people saw that or may have been influenced by it, but we need to step on it.
I'll one more thing. So, what people have done in the past at polls, and everybody has a video camera in their pocket nowadays. And if you see people that are within the 100-foot line that are not following the rules, my first suggestion would be to videotape them. Then, if you're wearing campaign materials, you cover up in some way. You go in and you talk to the election judge, and you tell them, and like you were saying, if they do not do anything about it, then, call Darrell, call elections, and, then show the tape.
Would you rather us call you, Darrell, or Steve, rather than calling down the area? Because I called down there today and checked it out, and I also filed a
If
complaint.
you're a poll
Did you get
watcher.
the complaint out of the election location, or you just sent an email?
No, I called and gave them an oral complaint when I called and talked to them.
Well, that works out too, and then, if you want to be a poll watcher, just come out of headquarters, we'll get you a form filled out if you're a poll watcher in any location. It takes just a little training, but, if you've been an election judge or worked elections before, you pretty much know what to look for. And, we can get you assigned as a poll watcher, you can spend 2 or 3 hours inside the polling place watching the things that go on. And that's, the eyes there would be better.
We need phone numbers for people to know who to call.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do an e-blast to my friends and tell them that if they see anything, for them to report, but I have no idea what the numbers are, or who to
Right.
call.
The Republic, I don't have the elections office at the back of my mind. The Republican headquarters is 817
Okay,
5
that I have.
595-0303.
But it's Tarrant County elections. What's that number?
But just do it internet.
There, you can Google it. Well, you know what?
Yeah,
What do
when
you
you
Why
Google
don't
it,
have
when you Google it,
election-
it'll
why
come
don't
up
you have that out
with
for people?
Garcia.
They haven't turned poll watchers. Have that list of numbers for the poll
Okay.
watchers and the
Sorry.
We need something.
Yeah.
We need something.
And ask what I know about the election administrator. I have not met him. Darrell, you have, I believe.
Henry.
His name is Hyder Garcia.
Does everybody want the number for election
Yes.
administrator? Okay, it's 817,
I don't have a pen.
okay.
Type it in
You
your
have a
phone.
phone? Take a note in your phone.
Give us a minute.
Say what?
Let me get ready.
You ready?
Yeah. Here's a pen.
Tell me when you're ready, here we go.
Okay.
817-831-8683.
And who is that?
It's,
It's Tarrant County election.
Garcia is the elections administrator. But the early elections, Bertha is running early voting for him. But it's number one on the phone tree.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Is that what you're saying?
Question?
We had where you sign people in, which is on, poll watcher review, but the problem
Yeah, let me
is,
just do that, yeah.
we have not attended to a poll watchers meeting where they tell you what to watch for. If we could have a list of those, I'm a believer, if they could publish that somewhere, and I don't mean, be a sheriff, but
Yeah.
anyway, just things that we should look out for.
I don't have a list. We can get one down, prepared down at headquarters. But I can tell you very quickly. It's things like Mike
Do
said.
they not have it on the email?
But-
They don't have to go down to headquarters?
Why don't we just
You can get it.
send
Well,
out
I
an
mean,
email?
on Facebook, on whatever it is.
On Facebook.
No, not Facebook. on the
No, we're not
website,
on Facebook.
the
Just-
website.
On the Tarrant County site, Darrell, if you want to, or I'll ask Jeremy in the morning to see if he can
Put
put up
some-
a top 10 list of
Yeah,
what you need as a poll watcher.
I would
to be on-
appreciate
on-
that.
yeah.
but the things, they're going to be things like leaving materials inside. Inside,
And no, I don't know what's his name.
electioneering inside the distance markers. Wearing campaign materials into the polling site itself. Having someone assist.
Like I said, we've done the poll and somebody went in, but that's different than you're watching what's going on.
Well, if you're a poll watcher, you can be inside the polls, watching them.
Check the picture.
Yeah, there's a quite way in the back. Yeah.
Steve, I had, I had represented a lady who was an election judge several years ago. She was given a citation by the police for basically trying to enforce the thing in the lane. I think you heard about the snap. She was a lady that was down, wore a shirt inside, and the complaint was received. The election judge comes out there and says, you need to move. Well, her friend was filming it. And from the back, it looked like she was actually touching it, which is an offensive contact. It's a Class C misdemeanor. The police came and looked at the video. They couldn't tell from the angle, so they went ahead and gave her a citation. Anyway, we did ultimately get it dismissed. That's another story. But what Heather says is right. If you're an election judge, have two of them. One of you to film, the other to act.
Say what that?
If you're an election judge and you're asked to come move somebody out who's campaigning, take a friend with you who will be filming it. And they film it from a distance where they can see that there's no contact. That way, if the police officer, if the Dems call the police and they want to do something, say, well, here, we got the video, and it's over. The other thing I learned through this experience, under the statute, the election judge during the election has the same power of the district judge. Exactly. Okay, that's the law.
You can have someone arrested.
Yes,
That's right.
yes. But cover your rear, have a friend with you who's got a camera.
Good advice.
Yes, ma'am.
Since we got negative news, I wanted to give some positive news. I went to the cruise event today at the Arlington Music Hall. It was great. He stood for pictures after with just a brief statement, and I let him know my husband's from El Paso. He's a Hispanic elected official. His father was postmaster out there and was eventually one of the top postal people in the country who was a registered Republican in El Paso. You would think that that's rare. But I told Mr. Cruz, I said, go to El Paso, there are conservatives there. He said he had a rally, and there were 3,000 people at that rally in El Paso.
Yeah.
You have no idea. So hopefully he was not, stretching the truth, but I don't think so. But there are people out there.
Okay, are there other questions? I've got one other topic I'm going to hit very quickly. Yes,
I
sir.
have one question. How much credence do you put in this, I guess it's been thrown around, the fact that the Kavanaugh situation basically brought the Never-Trumpers into the fold? I'm saying, okay, I kind of believe it, but I'm not seeing it yet. What's your opinion on that?
I think that's correct. I do believe that has given us a bump. The people that were never Trumpers are all of a sudden looking at what's happening. That, well, first of all, they see the successes that he's achieved. But secondly, what they're seeing is how vicious the other side is.
That's it.
Now, I think this was a setup deal from the beginning, and what happened is they hoped not to be able to use it because they didn't want to run the risk of perjury in front of a congressional committee. They did so that they went through the hearings and they never got to the point where they derailed it. So here comes Dr. Ford. Several things about that are strange to me, and if she had an issue when she was young, that's deplorable. It happened. I don't know, but wasn't Kavanaugh. But here's what took place. They had the letter for 45 days before they released it because they did not want to, but they said, well, okay, we can't get him that way. We've got to get something scandalous, and here we go. But you notice nothing that she said in testimony could be verified that it was incorrect. Didn't know the date, didn't know how she got there. I mean, she's 15, she can't drive. Didn't know the date, didn't know the place, didn't know the house. Things that could be verified, but she didn't get into things by saying, oh yeah, it was this house, it was this. Also, all the testimony from people that she said were accomplices, Mark Judge said no. Her friend said, no, I don't know anything about this. Didn't happen. That wasn't enough, and so then they went to the next one. This one that said, oh, he was the head of a rape gang, and 10 different times, and the answer's okay, and you went back. I don't think my girls, if that happened to them, would go back 9 more times. And so, well, that wasn't enough. And so now we come out with this, oh, no, it wasn't, I'm sorry, it was the second one was he waved his apparatus. But then the last one came out, who, as it turns out now, has serious psychological problems, and she's, matter of fact, in the net today, they're maybe pressing charges against her for false testimony.
They refer to abnality as well.
Yeah. So anyway, I do think it helped because it showed how vicious and bad and underhanded they're going to. When Schumer said we will do anything possible to derail this nomination, before they knew it was Kavanaugh. If it had been Amy Coney Barrett, who I thought was a superb choice, they wouldn't be rape, but it'd be something else. Because they are going to put up false testimony to delay any one of our people. So yes, I think it got some of the Never-Trumpers to wake up and say, hey, it's the old story about bringing a knife to a gunfight. You know, we're playing by the Marquess of Queensberry rules, and they're sitting there gutter fight, down and dirty, and, you know, kick them when they're down. And so we've got, that's what this indivisible thing is. And so we've got to go after them and fight back in hard. Now let me mention one other thing real quick.
If I can follow up on that, I talked to a couple of millennials shortly after that. Unsolicited comments when they found out I was involved in politics said, I've never voted before, I'm going to go vote straight ticket Republican. They were so disgusted with what happened.
Good.
Okay, let me mention something else that's happened in this. Some of you are aware of it, some of you may not. Our county chairman, Darrell Easton, has appointed a number of officers in the party. They were uniformly elected as a slate, ratified by the precinct chairman. One of the precinct chairmen has objected to the fact that Dr. Shahid Shafi is a Muslim. Dr. Shafi, and I didn't know him before, I've gotten some information, talked to him. We've had people like Barkat Ali, was active in the party. He's now up in Denton County. Dr. Shafi was born in India, but moved to Pakistan when the separation of the Muslims and the Hindus were separated. His parents moved to Pakistan. He was raised there, went to school, came over here, got an education, went back as a medical doctor and practiced for 2 years, and then came back over here in 2009 and 2010 became a citizen. He went to the Republican Precinct Convention, Senate District Convention, and State Convention in 2010, 12, 14, 16, and 18. He has worked with Jim Sutton to do training sessions to train Republicans to run for city council and school board. He's conducted several of those. He is an active Republican. In addition, he's a respected surgeon in the community, and he is on the city council up in Colleyville in his second term. He was on there. South Lake. So he's a second term. There are people that are objecting to him because he is a Muslim, because of his Islamic faith. My comment about that is Christians burn people at the stake. Does that mean all Christians are terrorists? The Crusaders lopped off people's head. Does that mean we're all the infidels? Does that mean we're all terrorists? The Catholic Church had the Spanish Inquisition, which, by the way, Rome didn't approve of. That was what Spain did. But does that mean all Catholics are terrorists? Likewise, unless I see something about Dr. Shafi that says that he is a terrorist, then I see nothing wrong with the appointment. But whether it was a good appointment or not is irrelevant. It was done. And Darrell made a good decision based on the information he had and how active Shafi had been and what he was doing. And so there's a big call about we want to remove him from office. If the removal call dealt with ideology or political philosophy, it might have some grounds. It is pure and simple a fact of religious connections. And if we let that happen and remove him over this, it will damage the Republican Party brand immeasurably, because we are discriminating solely and simply on the basis of religion. We cannot do that. Now, this issue will come up for those of you that are precinct chairman at the next executive committee meeting, because Dory O'Brien has said that she's going to bring this up. She gave notice, and that's what it takes to either rescind or amend a previous motion. If it comes up, there'll be debate about it, and they are trying to find ways not to let this happen, but it is, in my opinion, that this will be a roll call vote. I had the signatures last time if it came up. I will get the signatures this time. And in spite of the fact that we actually have a ruling from the Republican State Party chairman that the rules on requiring a roll call vote apply to executive committee meetings, which are precinct chairman. And the reason I want a roll call vote is that there may be some people that would If they have a mild amount of bigotry, they may just sign that thing if it's under the secrecy of anonymity. But I want people to stand up. I've never said something to, I've been in conflicts over the 43, 44 years I've been in politics. I have never said something about someone that I wouldn't say to their face. If I ever had a letter I had to put out that was in conflict, the very first one that went in the mailbox, I hand put in there to the individual that I was in conflict with. He got the notice before anybody else did. And I think our precinct chairmen who represent the Republicans that vote in the primary, and those people have elected that person to represent their precinct, have a right to know how those precinct chairmen vote. There are disagreements. Some people think, no, it's a private vote. Well, if you were voting as an individual, yes, but you're voting as a precinct chairman, and I think that precinct has a right to know. That's my opinion, and there will be people that disagree with it. I know my friend doesn't always agree with that. But let me say, there's one other issue I'm going to hit and address. There was a letter that came out, a long letter stating all the reasons that Darrell needs to take this guy out and calling him a coward. A coward. Colonel Easton is an Air Force fighter pilot. He flew an F-106, F-106, Delta Dagger, Delta Dagger. He flew in combat-related missions in Cambodia. He flew down in South Central America in suppression of the drug cartels. He's not only been a fighter pilot, he retired as a colonel in the Air Force, and he was a Air Wing commander. This man is no coward. But the guy that wrote the letter, or gal, that didn't sign it, talk about a sniveling coward. To make allegations of that nature about our county chairman, whether you agree with his decision or not is irrelevant. But Darrell Easton is no coward. He has taken the job on, thankless job. I know, I did it for 10 years. I had lots of arrows in the back. I told them they would come. Some of them were spears, too. But anyway, this issue, I just mentioned that and tell you that in my opinion, whether Shafi should have been appointed or not is not relevant. He is there. We will damage the Republican Party severely if we remove him solely and principally because of his Islamic faith. If I see a terrorist, I will fight them to the death, and I mean to the death. And I have the means to do that. But I don't see that in this case, and so I'll just quit at that point and say,